Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler, and today we're going to take a first look at my Rock Pirates RC Interceptor chassis build. Got a lot of awesome parts and components in this truck. This is kind of going to live on as the legacy of what my Pirate wagon was. This is the next evolution in that truck, basically. So originally I had an SCX 10.2 with all the Rock Pirates goodies, and this is Rock Pirates' new actual chassis that they've made and manufactured. So now it is a one piece, so you got the frame rails and shock tower design built into the frame rail, and then we're going to talk about and cover all the cool features of their chassis and how I made it work with my build. But first I kind of want to talk about how this chassis stands apart from the rest of the somewhat saturated flat rail market these days. So when they first told me they were actually going to make a chassis, that's kind of what my first thought was like, well, how are you guys going to separate yourselves and make something unique that actually offers something different for this? I really think they've actually done a great job. So if you purchased anything previously from Rock Pirates RC, like rock sliders or the front servo and winch trays, either for the SCX 10.2 or the Element, those are both compatible with this, as well as their battery tray that bolts onto there. Their hardline bed, which is on the back of this truck, that is compatible with their chassis as well. The rear cross brace, you end up just using, I actually have just a regular old frame spacer in there. You can also use one of the Element servo and winch mount brackets in the rear of the truck as well, and that's all compatible with this. But the really cool part is that it's designed to be used directly with an SCX 10.2 or an Element or a Vanquish VS410, to where it is a direct swap to the chassis. So I can take this truck and take all the parts off of it, take my sliders off, take my servo tray in there off, take my bed off, and bolt it all on here. But the really cool part is that it also uses the factory skid plate. So then you don't have to worry about changing and drilling out different transmission bolt holes if you're running a different transmission than what those trucks came with or anything like that. The transmission skid plate bolts straight into the new Interceptor chassis from Rock Pirates RC. Now what makes this especially cool is that most skid plates actually house the stock geometry for the link sets to hook from the axles to the skid plate. In most cases, that's how it is. So with this Interceptor, you're going to get factory built suspension geometry that was designed from Axial or Element, and so everything works really, really good. So that's actually why I chose to go with VS410 parts on this truck, because the skid plate on the VS410 houses all of the link components, both lower and upper, bolt directly into this skid. And the VS410 has a unique transmission design where you need to have your links in a specific placement to get around the motor and the transmission and hook up to those front axles. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about my truck, but yeah, that's one of the really cool things that I liked about this chassis design, is it's able to just super simple swap over and bolt on. Another really cool swap that you can do is actually an axial capra. You can take the axial capra, and essentially what you do, take the skid plate and transmission along with the links and the axles like I just mentioned, and those bolt directly into the Interceptor chassis. And so you can run a stock axial capra skid and trans with dig unit, and then send that directly to the axial capra axles. They're going to have 4-link with with an axle mounted servo for steering and whatnot. So it's a really simple swap, and that's a great way to get more performance, lower center of gravity out of your axial capra, because the cage on the capra is actually it has some heft to it, and it does make a slightly more top heavy rig. If you drop that drivetrain in one of these things, it is going to be an absolute line killer. And on top of that, it gives you more options with customizations as far as bodies and different things like that. But let's finally get into this truck. I'm going to move the camera, get a good close look, and we're going to go through all the components on my new Rock Pirates RC Interceptor chassis. All right, guys, so let's start with the real quick basics before I skip over them and forget to talk about them. I'm using a Proline Power Wagon body. That's what this is. So I'm not utilizing the Proline bed. It's just the cab, and I've cut the fenders off and I've trimmed the bottom side of the cab here as well to help it sit a little bit lower. And then the mounting of the cab, I've got 2 hood pins that come through the top. That's pretty obvious. But then I've also got rear pins that come through the forward side of this hardline bed, and there are 2 body posts. One is here and one is here. So that secures the rear of the cab. It cannot escape. And then it's also got the Rock Pirates RC Power Wagon sliders, and these help secure the body as well, offer a lot of protection. The bottom side of those sliders are smooth. These are full metal construction, and they're steel, not aluminum. So they're super tough, and they slide along the rocks really well. I really like these sliders, and they are built specifically for this, but there are a couple bodies that also work with this. I think things like the J-Concepts Creep works with them. I also think the Ecto can work with them as well, if I'm not mistaken. But if you have a wider body, they have other options. I think they have a 7-inch and an 8-inch wide slider set for the bigger bodies. Something like a Cliffhanger is going to use the 7-inch wide sliders, for example. All right, guys, so here it is with the body removed. Let's start just a way for me to get through everything, make sure I cover it all. Up front here, I've actually got an Element cross member off of a stock Element chassis. That's what's got the bumper post mounts, and the front bumper is from a Vanquish Phoenix. So nice plastic, smooth plate style bumper. It's also got a winch fair lead in there that I'm utilizing. Kind of cool, it kind of hides the hook when it's not in use. So that worked out really nice, but smooth design, not overly wide for the Power Wagon body. Not perfect, but it's all right. I can have it overhang just a little bit. Pretty happy with that. Moving back, we've already got some Rock Pirates RC parts that I've also utilized here. So I've got an SCX 10.2 servo and winch mount. Speaking of the servo and winch, went with Reefs RC on both. So we've got the Reefs RC 1100 Smart Servo, and then down here we've got a Reefs RC 299 LP winch. This thing is the shorty winch, and I can actually fit it in here sideways between the frame rail and the servo itself. So that fits really good. And then I've got mine where the spool is at the rear of the mount, and that's because the wires come out of this side of the servo. So I like having my wires go directly out the back. Gives me a little cleaner wiring setup. That way I'm not running them around and in front. Nothing to get tangled up. And then it leaves my spool further back from the fair lead up here. Gives it a more direct straight line out the front. Really happy with how that turned out. But solid aluminum, great part right there. This is where you also have your battery tray mount. However, I am not utilizing that because of the transmission that I'm using. Before we go too far back, we've got some axial 96mm shocks here, and then we've got the Rock Pirates RC body post holders, and then some plastic axial body posts there that you can get from one of their cast parts trees for like $3 or $4, and it comes with 5 or 6 different style body posts. I'm using a little bit of an offset here. I prefer to have my body mount into the body as wide as possible, just to give it more stability. So I like where these are sitting, right above the towers, good low height. Pretty happy with how those turned out. Moving rearward. So this is basically the heart of the truck. Something that I planned on from the beginning was to have a Vanquish VFD transmission, which also means that I'm using a Vanquish VFD skid plate. Now, I bought this as the kit from Vanquish Products, and it's actually cool because their transmission comes with this skid to make it all work super nice. You can see on the bottom side here, it's smooth. You can tell that high performance is important to Vanquish Products, as you can tell. Nice, good motor protection skid up here. I like how it goes from so far forward with all these smooth taper lines. Everything is smooth, and they know that you're gonna belly out on things, so everything slides along nicely. I really like this design, works out really good. As we're kind of looking at some details here, check out how Rock Pirates has all these holes pre-drilled for you, and all of them already existed. I didn't mess with this chassis at all. I didn't drill anything. These are all factory holes. So we've got the skid plate screws, and then these forward and rear screws are actually the bolts that go through the chassis and into the skid to hold some of the links in place on the VFD skid. VFD transmission, Vanquish forward design, I think is what it stands for. I'm hiding a Axe 2300 kV 540 cannon here. That's sitting down low and in
front, which yeah, you can kind of see those silver lines peeking through. But Axe Brushless censored motor, 2300 kV. I wouldn't have minded going to the 2800, but it's what my local hobby shop, Spec RC, had in stock at the time. And generally, I get a little excited and don't like to wait on things to ship. So that's why I have that in this truck. Speaking of the brushless system, as we spin around to this side, I did some cool things on this, something a little bit unique. The wires going from the motor wrap around the front of the VFD and then over to this side and into the ESC. Now, these sliders are tapered to fit the Power Wagon body. There's not enough room to set this ESC flat on the slider. There's not enough room between this edge here and the body to slip down in there. I just couldn't get that to fit. So I actually cut out a piece of Lexan and bent it into shape. I also cut it into shape. That part of the Lexan is sandwiched between the slider and the chassis rail. You can't really see it because I cut it that way. And then I drilled 2 holes so the screws go through the Lexan, and then it's got a bend, and this Lexan is the mount for my ESC. And I ran it up forward so that I could run this on an angle, and it keeps it pretty low. It's not quite as low as if it was sitting flat on the slider, but the wires weren't long enough to go any further back, and I didn't want to add any more wire to it. So I mounted it to this Lexan here. I didn't paint it or anything, didn't think it was necessary. But lightweight, cool option, I thought, something unique, and so that's how I mounted my ESC. Using Flysky GT5 receiver, I still need to clean up these wires and whatnot, but it's a fairly new build, so I'm still tweaking a few things here and there. On the other side of the truck, got my battery tray, got the Vanquish battery strap, so you know that it's legit. Let's actually pop this battery out. I want to show you guys the tray. This tray is off of an Axial SCX 10.3 base camp. The base camp comes with 2 battery trays. One of them is mounted to their stock slider and one of them is mounted in the rear for a full-size pack. I had one laying around that I wasn't using that I removed from the stock slider, and then I took the Rock Pirates RC sliders, drilled 2 holes for the mount of the battery tray, plopped that in there, and now I have a nice secure battery. It's better than just like a strip of Velcro on there. A lot of people just put Velcro on the battery and the slider. I'm a little too hard on my stuff. I like to roll it really hard, and I like having a legit battery strap in here, and then with these edges up at the front and back, the battery just can't escape, has nowhere to go, keeps everything locked down nice and tight, and then we got the solid battery strap on there. So I really like how that turned out. Utilizing some stuff I had in the parts bin, but it turned out super clean. Just made sure that I had enough room for the body between the battery tray and the slider there. So that turned out really good in my opinion. I like how it turned out. One detail I don't want to skip over. These aren't the official ones I'm going to run. I just put in an order with Deez company, but these are shock bands, and these are not limiting straps as they are elastic. These still allow the full range of motion from your suspension, and they are elastic. However, when you pick up the nose, it doesn't droop all the way out. So I can actually grab it and force it down more, but those bands help hold the nose down from the chassis to the axle on steep climbs. I went out without the Deez bands on my very first run, and I knew right away that these were going to be necessary. The nose on the truck liked to lift up, and it actually limited how steep I could climb. Adding these Deez bands in the front increased the capability of the truck, no doubt. So be sure to check out Deez company. Real small time shop, really cool. Dustin over there offers a ton of cool colors. You can get them to match your rig. These I had laying around from my bright yellow Capra, and threw them on this truck for the initial testing of the truck. And moving rearward, we've got our Rock Pirates RC hardline bed. These things are super cool because they match up really well with any cab that you have. However, I like to run these with the Power Wagon. Here we're getting a better idea and look at these body posts right here. So we got 1 and 2, and these go into the back of the cab. So it makes it super simple, and they lock in nice and tight to make sure all my wires are out of the way. But I simply slide the cab to the sliders first, then rearward, and then the nose will fall right onto the body post mounts. So now it's locked on, has nowhere to go, can take some serious slams with this kind of setup and not have the body pop off or anything like that. Really secure way to do it, and they actually have multiple holes. You could mount them closer, and they've got 3 vertically, although my drivers, they're a little hard to reach down in there, so I typically go for the top ones, but that's all right. You can see here, got multiple mounting options for different cross braces you might try and use. We've got the Rock Pirates RC cross brace. This adds some triangulation and strength to those vertical plates. This is actually a really cool thing to have on there. It increases the strength, adds some style, and you can put a spare tire through this if you choose to do so. I don't particularly care to haul around the extra weight on the rear of my truck, but if that's your style, this is an option. Go for it. Got the Rock Pirates rear shock tower design in here, got all the way to the top, all the way to the forward. That way I get a nice low forward shock angle, and then that gives my truck a ton of articulation. So this thing has over 5 inches of articulation, which is a lot. Typically people go for that 4.75 mark. This is actually closer to like 5 1/4, 5.5 inches of flex. This thing twists up. That is no issue for this guy. Got one chassis cross brace underneath the bed here, and then I've actually through bolted, there's little tabs that come down on the front edge of the bed here. Just in front of that shock, you can see this silver screw head in here. That goes through the chassis and bolts to it, and that's what holds my bed on. Little hidden detail here. Got the Rock Pirates RC logo on the bottom of the bed. That's a sticker I put on there. Not all of them come like that. And then when you need to really get up those big walls, I've got my NOS bottle in there for a little extra juice when you need it, although nobody will see it coming. All right, guys, that pretty much covers it there. Vanquish VFD transmission is feeding into these Vanquish F10 portal axles. So these are the axles out of the Vanquish Phoenix. So these are plastic housings. These are pretty cool. They're super robust, beefy. They use the axial gear sets like the AR44, AR45 style. Got the nice little anodized cap on the back of the axle housing there. Portal gearing into the output shafts, super beefy. I think these are 5mm. Is that? They have bigger output shafts than most RC crawler outputs have, which makes it a little bit of a pain because instead of having 7mm wheel nuts like everything else I own, this has 8mm wheel nuts with a little adapter that you have to remember to carry around. And sometimes I forget to bring it, and yeah, but that's just me, you know. Again, dropping this skid directly in here, I have all the stock geometry, so the stock link set for the Phoenix works no problem. No adjustments necessary. Everything bolts right up, running the Phoenix drive shafts up to the VFD trans. I'm not running the Phoenix transmission. The Phoenix transmission has added features to the VFD. This one's simple and stripped down. I don't have any dig. I don't have adjustable overdrive. I think in this transmission it comes with 6% overdrive, somewhere in there, and that's all I'm running for now. I will add a gear set to bump it 12 more percent, so I should end up around like 18% or so. I think that'll be quite nice for this build. Front axle, same thing, F10, lots of steering angle, and because everything is set up how it should be, I can get the full range of steering with this. I got the 24mm Vanquish servo horn on here. That is one thing that is super cool about this chassis, is actually the panhard mount for the 3-link suspension setups. For the AR44 SCX-10.2 setups, you're going to want to run your panhard as seen here, angled underneath the chassis. What's really cool about this is if you run an element truck, you can flip this thing around 180 degrees and have it poke out the chassis, and that is the setup for the element. These are also slotted. They're not just drilled through holes for the panhard mount, so you can fine tune and slide it forward or back. Where I got my best performance was sliding this forward and then having the panhard point inward for the Vanquish setup. I really like overall how that set me up. The panhard length is the right length it needs to be. I'm running it nice and slammed down low, got lots of clearance, and I can get the front of this truck super low with a full range of steering and no bump steer. So really liking how all that turned out. Again, it just dropped in, it bolted on, it was no problem. One note we need to talk about, oh, I totally misled you guys. Earlier I said this is an SCX-10.2 winch and servo mount. However, this is actually an element winch and servo mount. Originally I tried the 10.2, but with the VFD, the 10.2 mount here sits a little too far back, and it had some interference with the VFD transmission. And without wanting to cut that up, I just wanted a nice clean setup. I went to the element tray, and that eliminated all issues. So if you're running a VFD, get the element winch and servo tray from Rock Pirates. There's no modification necessary. It gives you more clearance. Everything bolts in, and that pretty much takes care of it. Wheels and tires real quick. We got Spec RC. These are their comp cut wheels. This design is the 19-11 style, so really awesome wheel. I did have to add some spacers on the hubs. I'm running wider hubs than I typically normally do. Got the Vanquish scale hardware, but I had to run wider hubs to clear the portals on the F10s with these wheels specifically. Crawler Innovations 4.75 dual stage foams, and then the tires are Proline Crawler tires in 4.75, and the G8 compound, that is my favorite tire as of now. There we go, guys. Full breakdown on my new Interceptor chassis. I've had it out on the rocks. I've been really mean to it. With the VFD feeding into portals, it's got a lot of gearing reduction and can really fight its way through a bind with the strength of the brushless Hobbywing Axe. Having a great time with it. I think I covered every little detail on here. If you guys have any questions on this thing, be sure to drop a comment, and I'm sure there's like one big thing I totally forgot to talk about, but I'll realize that later when it's too late to edit it into the video. So that's for you guys to figure out. Okay, until next time, guys, I greatly appreciate you watching. Check out rockpiratesrc.com. They got lots of great stuff. These things are super at a really good price, I think. For all the different options that they cover, I think that it's actually a really good deal and a lot of value in it. So be sure to head over to Rock Pirates RC and check them out. So Rock Pirates Interceptor chassis here, really liking it so far, having a good time with it. Still gonna tweak a few things, and I think this thing will be an absolute line killer by the time it's done. Already keeping up with what my Pirate Wagon was doing, and I'm sure with a little more tuning, I can beat it with this guy. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.